Welcome to Unusual Science. I'm your host, and today we're diving into one of the most captivating aspects of scientific history, scientific revolutions. Imagine waking up one morning to discover that everything you thought you knew about reality had been turned upside down. The sun no longer revolves around Earth. Time isn't constant. Solid matter is mostly empty space. Throughout history, moments like these have shattered our understanding of the universe and rebuilt it anew. These aren't mere discoveries. They're intellectual earthquakes that reshape the very landscape of human thought. In 1962, philosopher Thomas Kuhn introduced a revolutionary idea about revolution itself. In his groundbreaking work, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, Kuhn proposed that science doesn't simply progress in a linear, cumulative fashion. Instead, it advances through periodic upheavals, paradigm shifts, that completely transform how we see the world. Today, we'll journey through history's most profound scientific revolutions, exploring how they didn't just change what we know, but how we know. Before we explore specific revolutions, let's understand what makes a scientific revolution truly revolutionary. According to Kuhn, science typically operates within an established paradigm, a framework of theories, methods, and examples that define a scientific discipline. Most scientists engage in what Kuhn called normal science, solving puzzles within this established framework. But occasionally, anomalies accumulate, observations that the current paradigm can't explain. When these anomalies reach a critical mass, a crisis emerges. The old paradigm begins to crumble. And in this moment of scientific crisis, a new paradigm is born, one that can account for both the old observations and the troublesome anomalies. What's particularly fascinating is that new paradigms aren't merely extensions of old ones, they're fundamentally incompatible. The new worldview doesn't just add to our knowledge, it transforms it, creating a new scientific reality that's incommensurable with the old. Perhaps no scientific revolution better illustrates this process than the Copernican revolution. For over a millennium, the Ptolemaic system placed Earth at the center of the universe. This wasn't just astronomy, it was cosmology, philosophy, and theology intertwined. The geocentric model was elegant in its own way, using complex systems of epicycles to explain planetary motions. But as astronomical observations became more precise, those epicycles grew increasingly convoluted, like a theory patched together with intellectual duct tape. In 1543, Nicolaus Copernicus published On the Revolutions of the Celestial Spheres. Though legend has it, he received the first printed copy on his deathbed. His heliocentric model placed the sun at the center, with Earth and other planets orbiting around it. The beauty of Copernicus's model wasn't just its accuracy, though it was more accurate. It was its elegance, its simplicity. The retrograde motion of planets that required elaborate epicycles in the Ptolemaic system could now be explained by the simple fact that Earth and the other planets orbit the sun at different speeds. But make no mistake, this wasn't an immediate triumph of reason. Copernicus's ideas faced fierce resistance, not just from religious authorities who saw it contradicting scripture, but from astronomers and natural philosophers who had built their understanding of the cosmos on geocentric foundations. It would take the work of Johannes Kepler, who discovered that planetary orbits are elliptical rather than circular, and Galileo Galilei, whose telescope revealed moons orbiting Jupiter, a microcosm of the Copernican system, to cement this revolution. The Copernican revolution wasn't just about astronomy. It fundamentally altered humanity's place in the cosmos. No longer were we at the center of creation. Earth became just another planet, orbiting an ordinary star in an unfathomably vast universe. The philosophical implications were as profound as the astronomical ones. As John Donne lamented in his poem, the new philosophy calls all in doubt, tease all in pieces, all coherence gone. If Copernicus dislodged Earth from the center of the universe, Isaac Newton united heaven and earth under a single set of laws. Before Newton, physics was divided. Celestial bodies were thought to obey different laws than terrestrial objects. Newton's Principia, published in 1687, presented a unified framework of motion and gravitation that applied equally to an apple falling from a tree and the moon orbiting Earth. With 3 laws of motion and universal gravitation, Newton could explain everything from tides to planetary orbits. The Newtonian revolution gave us the clockwork universe, a cosmos operating according to precise, immutable laws that could, in principle, predict everything from the past to the infinite future. This mechanistic worldview extended beyond physics into philosophy, politics, and even religion. The universe became a grand machine, and God became the divine watchmaker who set it in motion. The implications were staggering. If everything followed deterministic laws, what did this mean for human free will? Newton's paradigm would reign supreme for over 2 centuries, becoming so embedded in scientific thought that it seemed impossible it could ever be overthrown. And yet, it would be. But before we get there, let's turn to another revolution that transformed not just our understanding of the physical world, but of life itself. Before Charles Darwin, species were largely believed to be fixed and created individually by God. The concept of species evolving over time existed, but lacked a compelling mechanism. Jean-Baptiste Lamarck had proposed that acquired characteristics could be inherited, but this theory had significant problems. When Darwin boarded HMS Beagle in 1831 for what would become a 5-year voyage around the world, he had no idea he was embarking on a journey that would revolutionize biology. Darwin's observations, particularly of finches in the Galapagos Islands with their differently shaped beaks adapted to different food sources, led him to the concept of natural selection. Organisms with traits better suited to their environment would survive and reproduce more successfully, passing those advantageous traits to their offspring. What made Darwin's theory so revolutionary was that it provided a mechanism for evolution that required no guiding intelligence, just the blind forces of variation, inheritance, and selection operating over vast periods of time. Darwin hesitated to publish, aware of the firestorm his ideas would ignite. Only when Alfred Russel Wallace independently arrived at similar conclusions did Darwin finally publish On the Origin of Species in 1859. The resistance was immediate and fierce. To suggest that humans were not specially created, but evolved from earlier primates, struck at the heart of religious and cultural identity. The famous Oxford debate between Thomas Huxley and Bishop Samuel Wilberforce became emblematic of the clash between evolutionary theory and traditional beliefs. The Darwinian revolution fundamentally altered our place in nature. Humans were no longer separate from the natural world, but part of it, the product of the same evolutionary processes as all other life. The implications extended beyond biology into psychology, sociology, and philosophy. Just as Copernicus had removed Earth from the center of the cosmos, Darwin removed humans from the center of creation. By the late 19th century, Newtonian physics seemed complete. Many physicists believed there was little left to discover except increasingly precise measurements. But small anomalies were accumulating, phenomena that couldn't be explained by classical physics. Enter Albert Einstein, a patent clerk who, in his miracle year of 1905, published papers that would overturn fundamental assumptions about the nature of space, time, and energy. Einstein's special theory of relativity showed that space and time aren't absolute but relative, depending on the observer's motion. His famous equation E equals mc2 demonstrated the equivalence of mass and energy. Later, his general theory of relativity revealed that gravity isn't a force but a curvature of spacetime caused by mass. These ideas were profoundly counterintuitive. Time dilating, space contracting, mass increasing with velocity. These weren't just new facts. They were new ways of thinking that required reimagining reality itself. The experimental confirmation of Einstein's predictions, such as the bending of starlight around the sun during a solar eclipse, cemented the relativistic revolution. Newtonian physics wasn't wrong, exactly. It was just a special case, valid only at the scales and speeds of everyday human experience. Einstein's revolution stretched beyond physics into philosophy. If time itself is relative, what does this mean for our understanding of causality, simultaneity, and being? But even as Einstein was revolutionizing our understanding of the very large, equally profound changes were occurring in our understanding of the very small. The quantum revolution began when Max Planck reluctantly introduced the idea that energy comes in discrete packets, or quanta, to explain blackbody radiation. a phenomenon classical physics couldn't account for. Einstein built on Planck's work, explaining the photoelectric effect by suggesting that light itself comes in quanta, later called photons. Niels Bohr applied quantum ideas to the atom, proposing that electrons can only occupy certain discrete energy levels. But the truly revolutionary aspects of quantum mechanics emerged with Werner Heisenberg's uncertainty principle and Erwin Schrödinger's wave equation. These revelations suggested that, at the quantum level, particles don't have definite positions and momenta until measured, existing instead as probability waves. Even more bizarrely, quantum entanglement suggested that particles could be instantaneously connected across vast distances, seemingly violating Einstein's cosmic speed limit. Einstein himself never fully accepted quantum mechanics, famously declaring that God does not play dice with the universe. The debate between Einstein and Bohr over the interpretation of quantum mechanics revealed something profound. This wasn't just a dispute about facts, but about what constitutes a satisfactory explanation in physics. The quantum revolution challenged determinism itself. If the fundamental building blocks of reality behave probabilistically rather than deterministically, what does this mean for causality and prediction? As we reflect on these scientific revolutions, patterns emerge. Each began with anomalies the old paradigm couldn't explain. Each faced resistance from the scientific establishment. Each required not just new facts, but new ways of thinking. Scientific revolutions don't just change what we know, they change how we know. They transform the very language and concepts scientists use to understand reality. And these revolutions continue. The ongoing attempts to reconcile quantum mechanics with general relativity may herald the next great paradigm shift. Theories like string theory and loop quantum gravity suggest radical reconceptions of space, time, and matter at the most fundamental levels. In neuroscience, new understandings of consciousness may revolutionize how we think about mind and self. In genetics and artificial intelligence, we may be on the cusp of revolutions that transform our understanding of life and intelligence. What makes scientific revolutions so fascinating is that they remind us that science is not a body of settled facts, but a process, an ever-evolving conversation between human minds and the mysteries of the universe. Each revolution teaches us humility. No matter how certain our current theories seem, they too may one day be overthrown or subsumed by deeper, more comprehensive understandings. As we close, consider this. What paradigms might we be trapped in right now? What fundamental assumptions about reality might future generations look back on with the same bewilderment with which we view the geocentric universe or the indivisible atom? The most profound scientific revolutions don't just answer questions, they change the questions we ask. And in doing so, they don't just expand our knowledge of the universe. They expand the universe of knowledge itself. Until next time, keep questioning, keep wondering, and stay curious about our unusual universe.